Did you know that the Bernina 880 has a perfect blind applique stitch already programmed into this machine? Now normally on most machines they have to use a blind hem stitch and then make it really narrow and then really close together to get that little look of a hand stitch that will jump right inside, say, a turned edge. Now circles are one of my favorite things, and to make circles, I'm going to show you a little trick here. I love to take a piece of fabric, and usually it is square, and right sides together lay it with a piece of fusible interfacing. So with those two, with the bumpy side towards the right side of the fabric, I put my circular sewing attachment on and sew a circle with the desired radius distance. Then I take pinking shears to make those little clips around the circle super easy, slit the middle just enough so I can get my fingers inside and then turn it. So we do a lot of these fun techniques in the Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course because the Bernina circular sewing attachment is something that we feature actually quite a bit with some of our decorative stitches. So I do show you actually step by step how to make these circles. But now look, they've got the fusible on the back. They could be fused onto a piece of fabric, and then using the built-in Bernina blind hem stitch, which I'm going to show you, we can easily tack these down. And it makes going and placing these circles to the fabric so easy. So the stitch is actually in the quilting menu, and it's stitch number 1331. Now you see that it actually is very similar to the stitch that I had recreated with the blind hem stitch, but I believe there's a few less stitches in between. It's also been narrowed down for me for less than 2 millimeters for width and a really short stitch length. Now once again, if you've seen me kind of play around with an open toe foot in a blanket stitch or a satin stitch, you know that having the stitch move to the far right needle position will make it super easy for you to follow. So I've gone ahead and put clear thread in the machine, and I matched my bobbin thread to the base fabric. So for any reason I'm going to get a little bobbin thread coming up, it might not even show if it's matching. But if you do get a little bobbin thread coming up, know that you can touch where the tension is and reduce it down maybe a number or two. Again, clear thread is kind of one of those finicky threads where sometimes it's stronger than it realizes it is, and you always need to reduce the top tension. So another thing is good quality clear thread, or as some people call it, invisible thread. So if you're just using a cheap, you know what I mean, a cheap quality thread, maybe it's 10, 20 years old, that might be something to change brands, buy yourself a fresh spool, and see if the newer quality of clear thread that they're making works better with your machine. So I actually have 2 circles ready to stitch down in place. I could even do part of it. I could do one over the other one, or I'm going to just actually do this smaller one just to show you. It is a little bit tighter turn, so if you do have your machine stopping with the needle in the down position and you do have it set for it to pop up and hover, you will love it for this technique. Now I want you to look at where the needle is going to go. The first stitch it takes is going to land in the fabric, so its first little bite there, and then you want to actually have it jump into the background fabric. So the background fabric has the straight stitches, and then the bite comes in on the side. See how that foot lifted up? And I pretty much am going to take a bite and then stop stitching, let the foot pop up, take a little tiny pivot, and here we go. Now, if you're just sewing it to a single layer of fabric, you will need some stabilizer underneath it. This has actually been sandwiched with batting. So this is actually a way to actually quilt through some of your quilt surface if you actually apply these circles to as the last part you put on a quilt. So I've often done this, and it really looks nice. And all you have to do is go around. Now, tell you the truth, well, I wouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to, is if you miss one of those bites, maybe you just kind of don't get it turned enough to get that little jump to catch in the fabric, nobody is going to know. You're going to find that you will love that very narrow stitch. Don't forget, you can get a Bernina magnifier So if you want to really see what you're doing, or if you're having trouble seeing this close for this type of intricate work, check with your Bernina retailer and ask for a Bernina magnifier that would sit right here and magnify this, kind of like how we're zoomed in here, just for this actual technique. But you're gonna see that you're gonna love the way that stitch looks. Now, yes, you are gonna see the holes right now as we're looking at them because they're so close up, but from a slightly, even just a 3-foot distance, you won't even see any of that when it's done. So I'm going to just finish this up since it's going to be stitched in place, and it will be a fun, that's how quick it is. So something that I always love to do. And working with clear thread gives you a whole new appreciation of not having to do this by hand.